Hello everybody, I hope you're well and welcome back to Voicenotes with Jordan Theresa. How is everybody doing today? Guys, the seasons are a-changing. Look at my duvet! If you're not watching, I've got burgundy gingham. Please let me know if this is like a bit of an eyesore though, because it is quite, I feel like it makes my eyes go funny when I look at it, but it truly does transform the room. Like how autumnal. Guys, it's Let It Linger season. If you could return, let it burn. Guys. We're recording a podcast episode today. It's raining outside. I've got my Marlon and Goat's bergamot candle burning. Life's good. It's going to be okay. I've got my cozy little fit on. It's not too cold yet. Life's good. I'm sorry that I missed an episode last week, by the way. I could very easily be like, it's the appendicitis of it all, but I'm not even joking. I think like 3 days before I was supposed to record my podcast episode, I was at karaoke with Kim and Herbie. So if you're well enough to do karaoke, you're well enough to record a podcast episode. But guys, I'm going to keep it real. I was feeling kind of anxious last week. No! It's fine. It's really not the deep. But I've spoken about this before, I'm pretty sure. But I take medication for my ADHD. I take Elvans. And basically, the doctor who prescribes it to me says to me, don't take it more than 4 times a week, otherwise you're going to start experiencing the negative side effects. And I'm like, yeah, all right, mate, sure. I thought he was just telling me to be a bit vigilant. No, turns out the medical professional who trained in this for decades maybe and has been practicing for an extremely long time was actually right, and I just experienced some really negative side effects from my medication, and one of those things is anxiety. And it's just like it's sort of a positive where I know when it's a medication issue because I'm getting anxious about things I don't usually get anxious about, and I'm getting anxious about very like silly irrational things like whether people like me, and so irrational, the thought of people disliking me, so irrational, you know what I mean? I just wasn't being super rational. I was getting anxious about everything. Like I was being very needy in a way, I guess. And I was like being a bit, I'm trying to describe it, but I was just very easily irritable. I was very easily upset. And I tried to record that podcast episode a few times and it just wasn't working every time. And I was getting very frustrated with myself. And then I just felt this like pressure. And then I was like, you know what? I've just got out of the hospital. All right, I'm going to take another just week off, but I just hope you guys know this is not the norm. We don't take weeks off in Voicenotes because I love doing this so much and it's so fun. But I was just having a bit of an off week. I've learned my lesson. I now have days where I take my ADHD medication, specific days, and then specific days where I'm like, you are not allowed to take it today. But yes, anxiety, we're so back. I'm better. Appendicitis, recovered. The scabs have fallen off / I just ripped them off, which is probably not a good idea. But we are so back. And you know what, guys? I forgot. It's so annoying. That's why I need to take better notes for my podcast, because I forgot to tell you guys such a funny story from the hospital last week. So basically, I told you guys that when I had if you didn't listen to my last episode, I had my appendix out a few weeks ago. And one of the things that they do when you get a appendectomy is they give you loads of morphine. So you sort of come out of like the procedure, like the surgery, like really off your face, but it's like extremely fun. And I was obviously texting everyone I knew that I'd like gotten out of surgery. I was alive, and I texted my girls group chat like selfie with me and my little oxygen tubes in, and I said I'm alive and my kidney is gone. Obviously, I meant I'm alive and my appendix is gone. But I said I'm alive and my kidney is gone. And my girlfriend's Kitty was freaking out. She thought that I was going to have to get dialysis. I was like, no. Because I think the reason why I had the mix up in my head was because the last time I was in the hospital was for a kidney infection. So I think that I just had like kidney on the mind, appendix on the mind. I had loads of morphine. I think I was given OxyContin at this point as well. So I was just on a different planet. But yes, I'm better now. I'm recovered. It's the autumn season. What's everyone doing to make themselves feel better this autumn season? Because I know that like the transition, it's difficult. I don't find it too bad. Like I'm very, very lucky that I don't get seasonal depression or anything. Even though I love the summer, I love festival season. You guys know that. And also like going on a night out in the winter and having to like do the debate of like, do I bring a big coat, check it into the cloakroom, and then whenever I go out for a cig, I have to be freezing cold? Or do I bring a slightly lighter jacket that I can tie around my waist, so when I do go to the smoking area, I can put it on, but it's not going to keep me super, super warm. And then when I have to go back home, like if I'm getting like the tube or bus or something, I'm really, really cold. Like that's the bargain that you have to make when you want to go on nights out in the winter. But I think what I like about winter is I like that I can get cozy. I like Christmas. I actually like Christmas. I think that like Christmas is polarizing. Christmas is polarizing. I actually really like Christmas, and I don't think that's a unique take. I don't, believe it or not, guys, liking Christmas is not my unique take. No, but I find that it's so stupid, but I have parents that aren't together anymore, right? I would like to say I'm going to be 27 this Christmas. So I turn 27 in, oh my God, guys, it's my birthday month. Happy October. It's my birthday month. I turn 27 on the 25th of October. I'm a Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio, like Scorpio star sign. And then I'm a Scorpio like moon sign as well. I'm a double Scorpio. And then I am a Sagittarius rising. Whatever the hell that means. And sorry, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I'm going to be 27 this year. Why do I still have to take time with my parents at Christmas? I need to know. Like, sorry, my sister is 30. Like, when are we going to get to the point where we just go, let's just go to whichever parent? Oh, hello. When are we going to get to the age where we're like, you know, let's just go to whichever parent we feel like more? Or why don't we just, my parents live quite near to each other, like my mum and my dad. Like, so why don't we just go and spend half the day at my mum's, half the day at my dad's, preferably the morning at my dad's, because I have a little sister, so we can unwrap the presents with her. And then about 4 p.m, we can go to my mum's, and then we can have like drinks, and we go to the neighbour's house, have like fun, boozy time, because my dad doesn't really drink, because he has a young child. So yeah, why don't we do that? But no, it has to be like full day, like at my dad's house. And I've actually missed my dad's Christmas the past 2 Christmases, as in like the last 4 years, because the first time I had COVID and I couldn't go. One Christmas, guys, I caught COVID and I didn't realize, and my mum was like, can you take a lateral flow before you come? And I took a lateral flow and it came up positive, and I had to spend Christmas by myself in my London flat alone. Yeah, no, but to be fair, it really wasn't that bad, because like everyone felt so sorry for me that like I had so many, and I don't live that far from my parents. So like they dropped me off care packages. I was eating good. I had all my presents dropped off to me. And then a couple of years after that, I was in LA for Christmas. So I was visiting my ex's family. So I haven't had like a proper Christmas at my dad's in like such a long time. So it'll be fun. I think it's especially fun doing Christmas with like a child there. It sounds like weird. I'm talking about my little sister like a child, but it's like fun to do Christmas with like a young child there, because obviously she's super, super excited. And you know what, guys? My favourite thing about having a little sibling is the fact that I get to go to Hamleys once a year and buy a present for her. I think last year I got her a magic set. There was like this like mismatch. And this is the thing, guys, I would like to say the staff at Hamleys, God's strongest soldiers. The staff at Hamleys, because they are just amazing. Like they are like obviously extremely enthusiastic, because obviously they're working like with children. And I would go, so I usually do Sophia's, like my little sister's Christmas shopping. I usually do it in like some random weekday morning in December, so I can like go in the stores fairly empty, and all of the staff are just so happy to show, because obviously they're selling it to you, so happy to show you all the toys, and it's so fun. So I got her a magic set last year, and this like nail polish thing and this like glitter thing. But I will say the issue is that she has everything. Like my little sister has so many toys and like so much stuff that it's like really, really difficult. But I'm not gonna lie, me and my older sister both do this when choosing presents for her, is we do choose the things that we want to play with the most. That's also another perk of having a little sibling, is that you kind of get to play with toys again, and it's really fun. So like I remember when she was really young, she had like the toy kitchen and like the little food, and it was just like so satisfying. And I think she got into slime for a second. She's not into slime anymore. But I'm trying to, I'm going to go to Hamleys. Last year I did my Christmas shopping so last minute, guys. Last year so I go home for Christmas and like go to my parents. So I don't spend a lot of time with my parents because my parents live quite close to me. So there's sort of like no point. And also I don't have a bedroom at either my mum or my dad's house. So I'm not going to it's not like relaxing to me to like stay on the sofa for more than a couple of days. But me and my sister go to my mum's on Christmas Eve, and then I come home, as in back to my house, on Boxing Day, like Boxing Day evening. So yeah, basically, sorry, I can't remember how I got onto this. So I don't spend a lot of time with my family. Like I don't do the full stint, but that's because I don't have a bedroom. Like I'm sure if I had a bedroom, maybe I'd stay a bit longer. But honestly, like I quite like being in London during that liminal week where everyone has like gone home for Christmas, because I can do all of the things that are usually really, really busy. This year I have my eyes and my heart set on those Hackney spas. They're always so busy, so booked up. I'm going to go during the liminal week. Hopefully it's still open, and I'm basically going to have the place to myself. But sorry, oh my God, how do we get onto Christmas? Yeah, no, so I quite like winter because I look forward to Christmas. Everyone's really happy, it feels like, in the run up to Christmas. Everyone's always making plans because everyone wants to see you around Christmas time and have like little Christmas celebrations. Secret Santas, that's always fun. And also I like dressing for this season. I feel like I dress a lot better in the winter than I do in the summer. Anyways, how is everybody doing today? I planned this podcast episode a couple of weeks ago, and I wrote in the notes, I want to mix up my intros a little bit because I feel like they've been getting a bit boring. So I wanted to try a mixture of current/pop culture affairs and life updates. So if this intro is a little different, we're going to look crazy up in here, please let me know if you like it, if you prefer this. Because I just feel like a lot of my intros have been like, oh, I did this thing last weekend and it was so good. And I'm doing this thing this weekend and I'm really excited. I do obviously want to tell you guys about my plans, but I do want to try and ham it up a bit here because I do feel like it's getting a bit boring. Guys, we're trying to take voice notes to the next level. I'm trying to make voice notes the best that it can be. I just love doing this so much, and this is what I want to do like full time. Imagine if I just got to yap on a podcast full time. The dream. But anyways, but what I am doing today on this autumn, chilly, rainy day is I'm going for lunch with my mum. And then I'm also getting my nails done. I'm getting my hair done tomorrow. I am doing like a full little beauty maintenance vlog over on my TikTok. I'm very active on TikTok at the moment if you want to follow me, but also follow my Instagram as well, at Jordan Theresa. And my TikTok is the same, at Jordan Theresa, if you want to follow me at that. You don't have to, but I am very active. Anyways, on this lovely like autumn rainy evening, well, terrible news, found out my favorite ramen restaurant, Head in Yokocho, has closed down. I will not be taking any messages during this morning period, but I hope you guys can respect my privacy and space during this time. Hello. But instead, me and my mum are going to go to Noodle Inn in Soho, and we're going to get some hand-pulled noodles. And they do these dumplings that have like a crispy bottom. Yum! And then I'm going to get my nails done, which will be on my TikTok. And I'm going to get my hair done tomorrow. And I'm just having a nice chilled weekend. Going to get some research notes printed off on Sunday, read through those. Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. So have I got a watch? So we do like a little what I'm reading / what's on my TBR. So I'm just finishing up on Laura Bates' The New Age of Sexism, which is a fantastic book, by the way, highly recommend. I'm also, so with my ADHD, I've really been struggling being a reading girly right now. So I've been dabbling in the audiobooks, and I've been listening to The Windrush Betrayal. It's available on Audible. You do have to pay for it, but it's worth it. Because usually I'm sure you can get it with like the tokens and stuff, but on Spotify you can get one free audiobook with your premium subscription, but The Windrush Betrayal isn't available on Spotify. So I listened to it on Audible. It's about the Windrush scandal, and it is, honestly, guys, it's such a difficult listen. It's like so upsetting. Like I listen to it and I'm like trying not to cry the entire time, hearing just these absolutely horrific stories, but it is so necessary. It's such a necessary listen. I think in any political times it's a necessary listen, but I especially think in these current political times with, you know, Nigel Farage, who is the far right party leader in the UK, threatening people who are here on leave to remain with deportation. Because this is the thing, is that a lot of these like far right political figures and leaders and politicians, they will try and lean on the crux of, oh, well, we don't care if you're an immigrant who contributes to this country. We just care about immigrants who are illegal and take advantage of our welfare system. When really that's not the case. They just want all immigrants out of this country because it's rooted in xenophobia and racism. And the Windrush scandal is one example of how extremely harsh, hostile immigration laws and mistreatment and abuse from the Home Office can impact people, innocent people. And this is the thing, I really want to, I don't want to like talk about this in terms of like people who are legally here and people who are illegally here, because there's no such thing as an illegal person. And also these like this far right ideology is full of so many fallacies, because again, they repeatedly say, we don't care if you're here legally and you contribute to this country, we only care about people who are here illegally. And they often refer to asylum seekers and refugees when, oh my God, believe it or not, this is 100% true, but claiming asylum is completely legal by international law. So already their ideology just completely crumbles and falls apart. So I think especially with the sort of state and the tensions going on in the UK at the moment, it's so important to listen to people's stories who have been impacted by harsh immigration laws, who have been impacted by hostility by the Home Office. And The Windrush Portrayal is a really amazing book, which I'd highly, highly recommend reading or listening to. I also have a few on my TBR. I think my October, this is a shorter one, so I should actually be able to squeeze two in. This is Angela Y. Davis, Are Prisons Obsolete? I read Race, Women and Class, which was obviously fantastic. And I do feel like prison abolition is something which is like a blind spot in my knowledge. So I definitely want to learn more about it. I got this and I also got because I picked up two because I didn't know which one was like the one that people would recommend more, which is Abolition Feminism Now, which is from multiple people, from Angela Y. Davis, Gina Den, Erica R. Miners and Beth E. Ritchie. So there's like a collection of essays, I believe. Yeah, so I've got that one. But I've also got Are Prisons Obsolete, and I think I'll read this one. And then I bought this one, but I think I'm actually going to lend this to someone first before I read it. It's called Mask Off by J.J. Bowler, and it is about essentially masculinity. What is masculinity? Dominating the world around us, from Trump's Twitter outburst to deadly gun violence. Masculinity is perceived to be toxic, fragile, and in crisis. J.J. Bowler exposes masculinity as a performance that men are socially conditioned into. Using examples of non-Western cultural traditions, music, and sport, he debunks popular myths. Masculinity lies at the heart of love and sex, the political stage, gang culture, competitive sports, mental health issues, and much more. Mask Off is an urgent call to unravel masculinity and redefine it. And this is from Pluto Press, and I love Pluto Press books. I read Feminism Interrupted by Lola Olufemi, which is a really fantastic book, and this one's really short as well, and I'm a very big fan of a short book. And then next, this is one that Jack recommended me. This is Reservoir Bitches by Dalia de la Curda, I think that's how you pronounce it. Life's a bitch, that's why you gotta rattle her cage even if she's foaming at the mouth. A collection of gritty, streetwise and wickedly funny fiction from Mexico. In the linked stories of Reservoir Bitches, 13 Mexican women prod the bitch that is life as they fight, sue, skirt, cheat, cry and lie their way through their tangled circumstances. From the all-powerful daughter of a cartel boss to the victim of transfemicide, from a house full of seamstresses to a socialite who supports her politician husband by faking her indigenous roots. These women split on their own reduction and invent new ways to survive, telling their stories in bold, unapologetic voices. At once social critique and black comedy, Reservoir Bitches is a raucous debut from one of Mexico's most thrilling new writers. Jack recommended this book to me because he actually read a quote to me that I had taken a picture of like 2 years earlier from a book called Dead Girls. I believe the author is Salva Almada, but I could be wrong on that. I'm going to voice over if I'm wrong, which is an amazing book. It's about a femicide in Argentina and basically the femicide and gender-based violence crisis in that country. And there is one quote which says they're going to collect the bones of these dead girls so they can run free again. It was encapsulating a part, like a bit of Argentinian folklore. There's like context to it. I'll voice over if I can find the quote, but it's a really, really amazing book. And he read that quote to me and I was like, oh my God, I took a picture of that quote like 2 years ago. But yeah, I think, which one am I going to read first? I think I'm going to do two for October because these ones are quite short. And I think I'm going to do Reservoir Bitches and Are Prisons Obsolete? that's what I'm going to do. That's on my TBR. I just need to very quickly finish up the new Age of Sexism. But yeah, I'm really, really excited for my new books. But yes, I would actually, obviously I've been doing audiobooks as well, but I would actually love any advice from any of my fellow ADHD girlies on how they read better, because it's really, really difficult. It's really, really difficult when you have the option to like watch YouTube videos or like watch TV or like scroll on TikTok. Like having to sort of hammer away at a book can be so difficult, and it can be so difficult to concentrate. But yeah, no, I'd love any advice, to be honest. I feel like maybe, is it one of those things where like you sort of have to make it cozy? Like you have to have like your room on cozy mode to be able to like read a book? Or to be fair, I always find that I read books best on public transport. I nowhere that I read a book better than on the tube. But yeah, so I've been doing a lot of audiobooks. I've also been listening to a lot of audio articles. Audio articles that I'd highly recommend is The Atlantic have a really good app, and nearly all of their articles are in audio form. And I listened to an article about the civil war in Sudan. It was like an hour-long listen, but it was really, really amazing. And I would highly recommend, if you, again, are someone who struggles with reading, struggles with focus, listen to the articles, because then you can do it as you're doing something, as you're getting ready. But yes, I'm cooking up some video essays right now for the main channel. I just uploaded my review of Materialist, but I'm also working on a couple of video essays. The first one is an expansion on a podcast episode, which was TikTok dating advice as an echo chamber of misery. I'm really, really excited to make that one. Leanne's cooking up the research now. I also want to work on a video essay. It's going to be a very short one, but I want to call it The Curse of Visible Irrelevance. And I basically want to talk about Tom Felton, Brooklyn Beckham, and almost the shortcomings of either having a famous parent or becoming famous as a child, and essentially how you have to fail in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and like how interesting I find it. And almost like, I guess the psychology of cringe as well really interests me. Like, why do so many people cringed out by those two men? And also I want to work on a video essay about the downfall of lads mags, because I think it's so interesting. Like FHM, Loaded, like why don't these lads mags exist anymore? Also like the beyond the lads mags, like basically porno mags, like Nuts and stuff, like Page 3, like essentially the sort of British lads culture, and like what the hell happened. So shall we do some thoughts of the week? So my thoughts of the week, I have one thought of the week, which is, at what point in your party girl life do you turn around one day and say you want to go on a hike? It's happening, guys. It's happening. I'm turning 27 in a few weeks, and now I want to go on a hike. Guys, I just want to be in nature. I just want to be in nature. I just want to feel the rain on my skin. Like, what? Like, but to be fair, what I will say is that a lot of my party girl life involves the outdoors, like AKA festivals. Me being like, I love the outdoors and I just love going to Glastonbury. But like, it's true. And I think that I'm not into any sports or exercises. I don't really have that many hobbies. So I think that like going on a hike is it for me. I know I am like really working on, because I'm debating getting rid of my office at the moment, because the whole reason I got it was to do recording work, and I can't record in there anymore because there's so much construction going around all the time. I just don't feel, also there's like always people walking around, that I don't feel super comfortable recording in there, to be honest. But I'm thinking of getting rid of the office, and me and my friend Ruby are planning to do like a little co-working trip in January. And I'm just thinking of all the places. Guys, I'm a not very well-traveled person. I had really, really bad anxiety when I was a teenager. Like when I was between the ages of like 18 and like 22, I had the worst anxiety. And it's still petering off a little bit, but now I want to travel. I have like places that I want to go to. I'm going to go to Amsterdam with Ruby in January. And there's so many places I haven't been because I really, really haven't traveled that much. I really want to go back to Albania. I want to go to Marseille. I want to go to Estonia next winter because Jack really recommended it. I want to go to where else? I want to go to Austria. I want to go to Berlin. Like, there's so many places that I want to go. I want to go traveling, guys. And the best thing about my job is that I can work from wherever. Like, I'm so privileged. I'm so lucky. That I think that when I sort of get rid of my office, I think I won't feel so chained to something. And I'll be like, you know what? Yeah, I will go to this place for like a week just for a change of scenery. Obviously, I'm very, very lucky to be able to do that. But yeah, no, I just want to travel more. And I've told you guys about how I sort of struggle with it because I find it very overwhelming, like planning holidays and stuff. But yeah, no, That's what I'm doing. So I don't know why I told you that. And one of the things that I want to do in my many travels is go on many hikes. And then shall we do some sets of the week? These are the sets that I've been listening to, honestly, for the past few weeks, actually, because I haven't spoken to you guys in a while. It's a new little segment I'm doing where I'm talking about all the sets that I've listened to, and I will work on a playlist for you guys. I just don't feel like I have enough to add into a big playlist, but the sets that I've been listening to have been Sam Alfred's Horser. One of you guys recommended it to me. It's so, so good. The last 15 minutes are my absolute fave. I'm listening to Simone's Boiler Room, which has a trance edit of Night Like This by Kylie Minogue. Guys, so fun. And then Carl Starkey's Radio Routine is really fun as well. Especially again, the last sort of 20 minutes, really fun. Very bouncy, and bouncy sort of techno is very much my vibe. And shall we do an outfit of the day? Oh my God, sorry, we're running through all the little segments. So my outfit of the day, this is like my very like autumnal, rainy, cozy. I'm going to go see my mum. We're going to have some cozy food. Then I'm going to get my nails done. It's going to be cozy vibes. So I've got this. I love these tops, by the way. I only have one. I do want to get one in another color so I can layer it. This is from Intimissimi. This is one of their cashmere boat neck tops. Don't get it twisted. Love this top, but it's 9% cashmere. The rest is polyester. So factor that in, that it's not 100% cashmere. But it's these like cashmere boat neck tops. They're just so good. They're so good. They're so flattering. I struggle with tops a lot because I do like a sort of more form-fitting, snatched top, but I have quite wide hips. So, oh my God, how many episodes can I go without talking about my fucking wide hips? Jordan, give it a rest. But I find that like tops really sort of like scroll. Oh my God, I just said scroll upwards. Guys, isn't that a sign of like technology bad? Anyways, roll upwards, and they like always end up looking like crop tops, but these ones don't, and they're so comfy. And I've got my little Fruity Booty bra underneath, and then I've got my new joggers that I just got tailored, so they're not super long on me anymore. Let me stand up so I can show you. These are from Karla Laidlaw. I have a pair of trousers from her, these like hook trousers, and they're sort of like hook yoga pant trousers. They are so, I can't say this word on YouTube, but it begins with a C. They are so blank-y, but they're kind of difficult to style. They're kind of difficult to style because they are quite, like, I guess quite raunchy. And I know that I shouldn't let this control what I wear, but like genuinely, I get catcalled on a different fucking degree. That like those trousers especially, like I get a flare up in catcalls that I just like rather not wear them. But she released these like jogging bottoms. They're like waffle material jogging bottoms, and they have like a similar waist, and they're basically like adjustable waist where you can like hook them up to be high-waisted, low-waisted, mid-waisted. I like to wear them like this. And they're just so comfortable, and they're very thick, and they're very, very good quality. And she ships from Australia. She's an Australian brand, but they are stocked at 128 Hackney Road in London. And also, I ordered them from Australia, and I didn't have to pay customs. I just had to pay delivery, which I think was around £15. So not that bad. I didn't have to pay any customs. And don't forget, if you wish, to subscribe to the Voicenotes with Jordan Theresa Substack. We have some bonus episodes up on there for paid subscribers, but also there's lots of like voice notes content, Substack articles. I'm very active on notes. Oh, my mum's calling me. 1 second. What was I saying? Sorry. I was talking about Substack. If you want bonus voice notes content, subscribe to the Substack. If you just want more voice notes content, articles, written things, recommended reading notes, then subscribe to the Voice Notes Substack, voicenotes with JordanTheresa.substack.com. We are very close to becoming a bestseller. The Manchego is our bestseller. You know, if you know. Oh my God, guys, we're so close to becoming a bestseller. I actually think we're like 4 or 5 subs off, paid subscribers off from becoming a bestseller, which is crazy. But obviously, you guys know it's no pressure. It's literally just if you want bonus content. There's already 2 bonus episodes up already. One about Bonnie Blue, one about Sydney Sweeney and Sabrina Carpenter. And we also do bonus monthly live streams as well. We do it once a month. It's very fun. And I definitely want to do a live stream when I hit 100 because that'll be really, really fun. But yes, subscribe if you wish. And let's get into it. Jordan from the future here. I wanted to add a quick disclaimer before getting into this episode because I've not really sure how I feel about it. I feel like this is going to be quite a conflicting episode because it's all about Carrie Bradshaw and this idea of should we defend her, should we not? Why is she so polarizing amongst Gen Z? Why is she so widely hated amongst Gen Z, actually? And it's difficult because on one hand, I do think that the real disdain and dislike towards her is representative of the type of sort of sanitized, over-moralized social media culture. But also on the other hand, is our dislike and disdain for Carrie actually rooted in the fact that we are growing up in a different time where we value friendship in a totally different way than we did 30 years ago, that we are growing up in this knowing your worth era where we don't take mistreatment from men in the same way, we deal and handle things like cheating and affairs with a lot more gravity. I think the reason why I'm nervous for this episode out is because I don't even necessarily defend her. I'm more approaching this from like a why do we feel this way, and the fact that like Carrie is a very human character. But also on the other hand, I think I'm just scared of being accused of defending cheating again, which is like, I get accused of doing this all the time, and the amount of people that say to me she's so obviously cheated on her partner before. And this is the thing, I never ever want to be like, yes I have, no I haven't, or like I'd rather not be like, no I haven't, because I don't want to put myself in this position of like, oh, like put myself in like this sort of morally superior position. But also people do accuse me of that all the time, and it is so annoying because I feel like I can't have a conversation about this. But yeah, I think that's why I wanted to like put this quick disclaimer in there, just to say that I'm approaching this not as a defense of her, but rather than as a conversation of why do people of our generation dislike her so much. Is it rooted in an over-sanitized, over-moralized, lack of nuance social media culture, or is it rather rooted in the fact that we have grown up in a totally different time where her behavior just isn't acceptable? And I more wanted to focus on the fact that why do people pathologize so much? Why do people jump to completely calling her a narcissist and labeling her as a completely bad person? I find it really interesting, and I obviously want to know you guys' thoughts. But yeah, approach this with like a nuanced conversation, because it's funny because I felt like I'm probably leaning on defending her, but then I went out for lunch with my mum after recording this episode, and she went, Jordan, what she did to Natasha was just unacceptable, and that just doesn't fly anymore. And I was like, you know what, mum, good point. But yeah, no, it's like, it's more just a conversation. Just wanted to like get that out there because I think I'm a bit nervous to put this episode out. You can tell that I have anxiety at the moment. But yeah, enjoy the episode. So in today's episode of Voicenotes Jordan Theresa, this is going to be a little bit of a weird one. This is going to be a little bit of a, it's wackadoodle time. It's whack-a-doodle time. This is going to be a little bit of a weird one. I honestly, like when I was planning it, I have things to say. And it's basically the sort of case study for this episode. The jumping off point is Carrie Bradshaw. It's Carrie Bradshaw hate. I watched a Zoe Deschanel, Broe Deschanel. My mistake. I watched a Broe Deschanel video called Who's Afraid of Carrie Bradshaw, and it's basically about the recent sort of influx of Carrie Bradshaw hate, why do so many people hate her. I'm using that as a jumping off point, but I will say this is going to get a little weird, a little wacky. This is not necessarily philosophical, but it's giving like philosophical train of thought, if that makes sense. Like it's giving conceptual. This is a conceptual episode. But you know, I think I'm only allowed to use the appendicitis excuse one more time before I'm like, all right, Jordan, pack it up. But I am getting back into it. So allow it if this episode's a bit strange. But like, I think this is good. And I kind of like these like weirder, more broad but niche, if that is an oxymoron. Hopefully it's not. Broad, niche, trail of thoughts episodes. I think this is going to be fun. But I think it was around 6 months ago. I feel like, and I'm wondering if you guys agree with me, I feel like I saw a real influx of Carrie Bradshaw hate on like all of my feeds, specifically Twitter and TikTok. And if you don't know who Carrie Bradshaw is, she is the main character in Sex and the City and its spin-off and Just Like That. So my opinions on Sex and the City is I love Sex and the City. I think Sex and the City is an extremely iconic show. I think it was so ahead of its time. I think that it addressed, it's actually so crazy how many of like the taboo topics that it addressed in like the 90s and early 2000s that are still like taboo to this day. I absolutely love that show. It has a real special place in my heart. I'm not gonna lie, and Just Like That, it's one of those ones where I don't think of it as being attached to Sex and the City. I think of it as sort of like this like very like so bad that it's good show that I watched for a few years that happens to have the women of Sex and the City in it, because the women in that show, they act so different from their characters of Sex and the City that you can actually really compartmentalize it and think of them as two totally separate things. So if you're someone who's a really big fan of Sex and the City and you're like, I don't want And Just Like That to ruin it, don't worry, honestly it won't, because they behave so differently that you will just think of it as a different show. And I think what I liked about And Just Like That is that they were clearly, you know, they were really making an effort to be inclusive and cover different storylines, and be very intersectional. And I actually liked it. Like, I know that a lot of people thought that it was trying too hard and criticisms along those lines, but I think that it's better than they tried than like not trying at all and digging their heels in, because obviously Sex and the City and many shows that are set in New York, about women in their late 20s, early 30s, often receive the criticisms of, where is the diversity? This is set in one of the most diverse cities in the world. So I like the fact that they tried. I like the fact that they tried and they made an effort. But circling back, so the Carrie Bradshaw hate of it all was, what I was mainly seeing was sort of circulations of Carrie cringe compilations, Carrie being a bad friend compilations, and all of Carrie's scariest moments with horror music overlaid on the top, which, guys, that was mean. That was so mean. And I want to make it clear that my favorite thing about, you know, Sex and the City and shows like it is that it creates discourse, it creates conversation. I am not anti-Carrie criticism or discourse, you know, without it, you know, I think without any sort of like Carrie discourse commentary, we wouldn't have But the Body Is Tea. Guys, The Body Is Tea was created from a Carrie screenshot from when she was going to Big's house. Like, she's so embarrassing, but her body is tea, so I can't stay mad. Oh my God, the impact of The Body Is Tea. So I'm not anti having some Carrie discourse and conversations, but I'm a little anti cringe compilation. And I think because it's a kind of lazy way of critiquing her, I think. And also I think that this is so stupid that I'm this invested in this. But I think the thing with cringe compilations is that everything is being taken out of context. And a lot of people who have never watched the show watch a cringe compilation and then go and decide to watch the show, and they go in with the preconceived notion and thought of what they think Carrie's going to be like, so they're more likely to dislike her, which actually I think if you go into the show blind and you go into the show not aware of people's opinions, she definitely does things that irritates you and annoys you and makes you mad, makes you want to rip your hair out. But also, she's a very human character and she's very charming. She's a very charming character that you do end up liking her. But I do think that if you went in watching the show and you had only seen the cringe compilations, then you're going to go in and you're not going to like her. You know, it's interesting because I guess with these cringe compilations and with, this is what I'm talking about when I say this episode is a little wackadoodle time, because we're going to be going on many trains of thought. But I think what I was also thinking about when planning this episode was our aversion to cringe, and like essentially how I feel like cringe compilations are a wider symptom of how averse we are to cringe, and how I feel like we can't have any like fun and experimental TV shows, music, films, because people live in fear, fashion, because people live in fear of being called cringe. And this is the thing, I'm not going to act like I'm above not thinking that something is cringe. Of course I am, I'm a human. But I find it so interesting that I think in a way, like these cringe compilations and like this social media culture of like calling things cringe has like totally ruined anyone wanting to be creative. And I feel like this like ties in with what I'm talking about with this curse of visible relevance, in terms of like Brooklyn Beckham, for example, how he essentially has to fail in front of hundreds of thousands of people and people will just point and call it cringe. That, you know, people can't be experimental, they can't try things out, especially because like everything functions on a For You algorithm nowadays, that people can't like be experimental, play around, fail without feeling like they're going to fail and be cringe in front of hundreds of thousands of people. And I think that makes people go in on themselves. I think that's making the world a more boring place. I think it's making the world and social media a much more sanitized place because people are so afraid of being mocked, myself included. I'm absolutely not free from this. But circling back to the Carrie Bradshaw hate of it all, I do not know whether she's always been a polarizing character or whether she's more of a polarizing character within my generation. I will say there is a website which is called www.carriebradshawistheworst.com. So maybe this is a persisting issue, which is going across generations. But I'm finding it particularly prevalent amongst Gen Z. And I just feel like, number one, this is a miserable way to watch TV. Am I crazy for thinking this is a miserable way to watch TV? And I'm not even that much of a Carrie Bradshaw defender, but we're going to get into this in a second. But one thing I actually cannot get over within the thick of this Carrie Bradshaw hate is I will not stand for the Carrie Bradshaw hate escalating into defending Big. We are not going to defend Big in this house. And I don't want to go too into like Big and Carrie, I guess, because I want to try and make this episode as like palatable and listenable to people who have not watched Sex and the City. So I do want to make it clear that I do actually think this episode is possible to listen to if you haven't watched Sex and the City, just so you know. But basically, just for some context for anyone who hasn't watched the show, Big is the guy that Carrie crashes out over for like 3 or 4 years, basically her entire life, honestly. And basically he doesn't treat her very well. He treats her like a second option. He treats her as basically a placeholder. Oh, hello, what are you doing? He treats her as a placeholder until he finds a better option. He's not a good guy. He's not a nice guy. And it's so interesting that like people find Carrie, firstly, they find her annoying, which I think it's one of those things where like is the greatest crime that a woman can commit is being annoying. People often think that when a woman is annoying, it's a reflection of her character and that therefore she must be a bad person. But also like Carrie's biggest crimes is that like she can be she's a selfish friend sometimes, and she puts men first, and she puts male validation, especially the validation of Big first. Sometimes she prioritizes men over her girlfriends, etc. But it's so interesting that like people will go to defend Big over her just for the fact that like she can be an infuriating character to watch, I think, because she's always making mistakes and she's always doing things that as an audience you're like, why are you doing that? But it's really interesting that people going to defend Big over Carrie, because people often say like, oh, he was really upfront with the fact that he didn't want anything serious with her. He wasn't that upfront. But it reminds me a lot of a Substack essay by Josh from Tell the Bees, who I reference a lot on this podcast. And it's called Boyfriend Land. And it's basically, no matter where you go, there will always be hordes of women defending horrible men. Like, it's so interesting because he basically references these TikToks of like men getting angry when they find out they're having a girl at a gender reveal, or like smashing wedding cake into their partner's face on their wedding day, which obviously it ruins their makeup. And it's like so interesting that like you'll obviously watch it, be horrified, and then you'll go in the comments and there's always women defending these men. You're loving this conversation, aren't you? There's always women defending these men, and it's never ever the other way around. It's never ever ever men defending women. Let's keep it real. And I think that's going to be the next podcast episode that I'm going to work on. Is I'm going to use Boyfriend Land as a bit of inspiration, because I want to talk about Ned Folmer's podcast. I want to talk about wife guys. I want to talk about bare minimum boyfriends, because I've been seeing a lot of TikToks of girls saying like, here's things that my boyfriend do that would send bare minimum boyfriends into a coma, stuff like that. Very interesting. We'll get onto that in the next episode. But I'm really interested that why as women are we harsher critics on women than men? To be fair, I don't think all of it is rooted in an element of internalized misogyny. I do actually think some of it is rooted in the fact that as a woman, you tend to hold women to higher standards because you compare. It's easier to compare a woman's behavior to your own behavior as a woman. And it's easier to sort of draw one-to-one comparisons because you're like, oh, well, I would not act like that. So it's easier to be critical. But also, I do think that obviously there is an element of internalized misogyny. There's an element of holding women to much higher standards than men. And I think that is like so interesting that as I was like writing this podcast episode, I was thinking like, God, we are not ready for complex female characters. Like if we cannot handle Carrie Bradshaw, we are not ready for complex female characters. I thought that it would be fun, and I feel like this hopefully is listenable for people who have not watched Sex and the City, to rank Carrie's worst moments and see what I think. And what I will say is that the ones that I'm not going to rank is any comments which have aged poorly, because all of the characters of Sex and the City, because it was a show made in the 90s, have all had comments which have aged poorly. So I don't think that's like a reflection of the character, but I'm going to rank all of Carrie's worst moments. So the first one is, first of all, people always say that she's judgmental. All of those women are judgmental. But Carrie stands Miranda up to have dinner with Big. And basically it's an example of her rearranging her life to fit into his. So she basically stands Miranda up because Miranda's at the restaurant. Miranda calls her and she's like, where are you? And she's like, I'm eating veal with Big. And this is foul. This is foul. I can't defend Carrie on this one. That's bad. If one of my friends did that, I'd be pissed. I'm actually so interested in like, how the hell did the world work before smartphones? Like, would you organize a dinner with a friend and just expect them to be there? Would you call them the day with your house phone and just to confirm that you're both going to be there? Would you send them an email? Would you send them a fax? Like, that stresses me out. But I'm really curious to know, as someone who grew up, whose like entire adulthood has been the smartphones era, people who experience like adult or teenage years without smartphones, was standing up quite a common thing, because Miranda does not seem as mad about it as she should be. She goes to therapy just to flirt with one of the hot clients. She's just a human. She's just a human. That's fine by my book. She doesn't vote. Yeah, no, diva down. That's not good. That is not good. But again, is it one of those things where it was a sign of the times? I wonder how many people didn't vote back then and how much not voting was seen as acceptable. Interesting. Also, I'd like to say that it's like so interesting the way that people talk about Carrie Bradshaw and how many people pathologize her behavior. I find that so interesting that things, it lacks so much nuance, discourse about Carrie, because people will often say like, literally this article accuses her of being a narcissist. Like, and I'm literally like, whoa, let's relax, because being a narcissist. They accuse Carrie of kink shaming because she's horrified that a guy that she's dating wants her to give him a golden shower. I'm sorry, but like, unless you're into that, wouldn't you be horrified too? Like, it's so interesting, like how these like standards, and I know that Carrie Bradshaw isn't a real person, but I feel like this like can reflect on sort of like social media culture as a whole, like a bit more widely, social media culture, how sanitized things have become, that like we have to act like we wouldn't also be like shocked and horrified if someone asked that of us. And I don't even mean it in a kink shaming way. Everybody has their thing. If someone that I was seeing asked me to do that, I would also be like, that's their thing. Who am I to judge? But I also would be horrified if they asked me. And I would go straight to my girlfriends and talk about it. But Carrie cheats on Aiden with Big. Yeah, no, that was not good, because Big was married too. Not good. Carrie demands Natasha hears her apology. Also not good. She should have just accepted that Natasha didn't want to hear her apology. Carrie invites Big to Aiden's cabin after they got back together, so she could be there for him. That was foul. I actually think this was the worst Carrie moment. Imagine you cheat on your partner and you beg for him back and he takes you back, and then you invite the man that you had the affair with to your romantic cabin in the evening. Insane. Carrie sends Aiden to help Miranda. This is a difficult one, because basically the story is that Miranda fell over in the shower, calls Carrie and is like, I can't get up, I've done my back in, like, please help me. Carrie's about to go into a really big meeting with the editor, so she calls Aiden and gets him to come over and help Miranda, but she's like naked on the floor and she feels really humiliated. Carrie didn't give her any warning. It's difficult. I can see both sides on that one, because she should have given Miranda some warning, but also when you've got a really big work thing and it's like an incredibly important meeting that you literally cannot get out of, you're obviously going to like try and find a solution. Carrie expects Charlotte to bail her out. This is a difficult one. Basically, the story is that Carrie has to buy her apartment back from Aiden, but she has no money. And she is like quite reckless with her money, because she obviously buys a lot of like designer clothes and stuff. And all of her friends offer to help her, apart from Charlotte, who is easily the wealthiest of them all. And often people say like, this was absolutely absurd from Carrie. I think that it was like cringeworthy to voice it, but also I don't think it's crazy to be annoyed that your like significantly wealthy friend does not want to help you during a time of need or doesn't offer their help. But I think confronting it is kind of crazy. Again, these are just for me speed running through some of Carrie's moments. I'm not anti having Carrie discourse, as Sex and the City produces conversation, discourse, debates, and that's why I love it so much. But what really interests me is people jump to label Carrie extremely negatively and pathologize her behavior and look at everything in a very very black and white way. You know, the article I'm citing calls her a narcissist. So many people call Carrie a narcissist, and I don't actually think that's correct. And I think it's so interesting that like when someone cites bad behavior, or when someone cites behavior that we wouldn't do or we won't like, we immediately jump to calling them a narcissist, to pathologizing their behavior, to labeling them extremely negatively. We beg for more complex female characters, more unlikable female characters, yet when we are presented with them, we tear them apart. And we don't just tear them apart because, again, it's fine to have conversations, it's fine to have discourse, it's interesting, but we label them as a narcissist and say that we don't like them and say that the show would be better without them. Let's make it very clear, the show would be nothing without Carrie. The show would be nothing without Carrie. It would be so boring. People like want TV shows without these kinds of complex, unlikable characters, but that would make for extremely boring TV. And I think that my running theory with this is that this is why fan fiction is really bad. I used to be a very big fan fiction reader when I was a teenager. And, you know, what a lot of fan fiction suffered from was because a lot of fan fiction was self-insert. Number one, it was a lot of young people writing fan fiction, fellow, 13-year-old girls writing fan fiction. But also fan fiction was very self-insert, and it was very like fantasy and imaginary and putting yourself like in the place of the character, that it essentially would suffer with the perfect main character trope, which is why the writing tended to be really limited, which is why the fan fiction tended to be really bad. I spoke about this in my review of Materialist, but I hate love triangles when there's an obviously bad option because it's so boring. This wasn't a love triangle, but I remember when I watched Love, Rosie, something that I found so disappointing was when she gets back with the father of her child, but then the relationship just finishes that he just cheats on her and then we never see him again. So he's just sort of painted as this bad guy, when I actually think it would make for a far more interesting film if their relationship just broke down, but like he wasn't a bad person. That's why I like Past Life so much, by the way, because the husband wasn't like a clear evil. And it's interesting because what I write in my notes here is, do we approach all media as if it's self-insert? And like, why, if we do approach media as self-insert, why can we just relate to some parts of Carrie and not others and leave it as that? Why do we, if we don't like her, don't resonate with her behavior, we accuse her of being a narcissist? We say I support women's rights and I support women's wrongs, but do we really support women's wrongs? It's interesting that I feel like almost modern audiences, and I feel like this could be a byproduct of convenience culture and the fact that everything is sort of served to us very, very easily, is that audiences don't want to try and understand these characters. So not only do I think that that's audiences don't want to dig into them, as soon as a character makes them feel uncomfortable, as soon as a character does something that they don't like or they don't agree with, they sort of strike them off the record, accuse them of being this, that, and the other, and want them not in the show anymore. And I think not only is that a representation of convenience culture, but I also think it's kind of representative of this era of anti-intellectualism that we're in, where we can never look at things in the grey areas. Everything always has to be very black and white. I find it so interesting that why do audiences, especially young people, hate Carrie Bradshaw so much? I think it's partly chalked up to her being the lead character, so we spend the most time with her. Therefore we see the consequence of her bad actions. We spend the most time with her when she's doing these bad things, but also I think something that made Carrie really relatable to millennial and Gen X and even boomer audiences is the fact that like people watch Carrie and they go, we've all been there over a year's long crashing out over the same man. But I actually think that maybe the limits of Sex and the City and the limits of Carrie is the fact that she's less relatable to a younger audience who go out less, have sex less, and socialize less. I also think that Sex and the City, especially the character of Carrie, doesn't necessarily resonate with, Gen Z women who are very much know your worth, never let a man mistreat you. I want a man that worships the ground that I walk on. I want a partner that worships the ground that I walk on, etc. And I think that Carrie being down bad for this man who clearly doesn't really like her very much or doesn't actually respect her. You can like someone and not respect them, who doesn't respect her or see her as a long-term partner. It's just something that I think younger Gen Z female audiences just don't resonate with. And I think, again, sort of circling back to the fact that this is a generation that go out less, have sex less, and socialize less, this generation, therefore, is going to be a lot less messy. I also think that people are less inclined to be messy because a lot of people's third spaces are social media. For example, TikTok is a third space where people sort of socialize and they not only just socialize with each other, but they also learn things. And there's a lot of socialized learning within social media, and they learn behaviors that they should and shouldn't have via seeing people who are publicly shamed for X behavior and knowing not to do that I think because of this very sanitized social media culture, a lot more young people are less inclined to be messy and make mistakes. They're a lot more vigilant and careful than generations before them. But also, I do think that maybe my theory is that people feel so averse to Carrie because they see themselves in her. Like, how can you hate Carrie Bradshaw but be in a situationship? Girl. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, but again, as I said, I also think that Carrie was a product of her time, and I think younger audiences, especially growing up in this knowing your worth era, do not respond well to her or her mistakes. You know, Carrie and Big may have been seen as a love story whilst it was airing, and again, very interested to know any Voice Notes listeners that were watching Sex and the City as it was airing, what was the perception of Carrie and Big? That it may have been seen as a love story when airing, but now is seen as a horror story. I also think that we are in an era and part of a generation of over-moralizing on social media, socially conscious bullies, and sanitized social media culture. Moralizing our characters has been born from Stan Wars. To win an argument, you list all of the horrible things this other person has done, holding on to every bad thing that they have ever done within the run of the show. I don't think that TV shows were meant to be, consumed or enjoyed in this way. Because social media culture is extremely sanitized, any hint of morally grey behavior, you are shamed by thousands of people. Social media is many people's third space, as I mentioned earlier, and if our third spaces are overly sanitized, then we expect our TV shows to be as well. And I think that a lot of this is the by-effect of the socially conscious bully, bullying people under the guise of accountability. I know that Carrie is a fictional character and this doesn't necessarily apply one-to-one, but I do think that almost the sort of treatment of Carrie echoes that of the socially conscious bully, where people will bully other people under the guise of accountability and get their bullying kicks, but they're doing it under the guise of, oh, they're a bad person. It's actually interesting that people criticize Carrie for being judgmental whilst they're also being extremely judgmental. Again, I know that Carrie Bradshaw isn't a real person, but I think this knee-jerk reaction to put characters' behavior on a moral scale and dictate whether they are good or a bad person is perhaps ruining our TV watching experience. Does there need to really be a good guy and a bad guy? And why do we keep following into these tropes? Is it because, our brains can always process it and compute it better? I think reading this kind of social media moral policing every day impacts our psychology. It could impact the way that we write stories. And if we are in a creative field, of like perhaps we don't want to make characters too unlikable, but also the way that we act around our friends, the way that we forgive people, the way that we forgive ourselves. I feel like if we're socializing within these very, overly, police social media spaces, these overly like morally police social media spaces, is that going to impact the way that we perceive our friends' actions? And are we going to be less likely to forgive them? And are we going to be more likely to label our friends as bad people because they've made mistakes, for example? Sorry, as you can tell, this is a bit of a wackadoodle podcast, but, I feel like what I'm sort of, came to conclude with this episode is, does our avert opinions towards Carrie Bradshaw reflect our intolerance to people being human and making mistakes? How do we expect to build community if we can't be there with our friends during their worst moments? And that's sort of what I want to finish this episode off on, because I do genuinely think, and I know I'm going to sound crazy, but I do think that, are we truly ready for community if we can't handle the Carrie Bradshaws in our lives? If we can't handle our friends at their worst, then do we deserve them at their best? I do think that people's sort of intolerance to any kind of morally grey or bad behavior, and their friends and their loved ones making mistakes, I think that's absolutely going to impact the way that people build community. And I think that people's intolerance to people's bad behaviors and mistakes is totally reflective of the fact that we spend so much time in these overly policed, public shaming areas like social media, like a TikTok feed, etc. And again, I'm not saying that you can't cut people out. I'm not saying that. Do what you want. But I think that, I don't know how I'm going to finish this episode off, but I just think it's worth thinking about. I just think this is just an interesting train of thought that I had, but I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know this is a little crazy. This is a little crazy episode. This is a little philosophical. But I just had a few thoughts bouncing around about this, and what is this podcast for if not to bounce my thoughts? But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next week for another one. Bye.